The Mafia boss sees his housekeeper in the living room dancing for his special needs son. His reaction was unbelievable. Vincent Moretti never imagined that on that day, returning early from his operations, his life would change forever. At 45 years old, the boss had built an empire in various business ventures worth over $200 million. His mansion in the upscale neighborhood of Pacific Palisades, Los Angeles, was the perfect symbol of his power. 50,000 square feet of pure luxury, with 15 rooms, an Olympic pool, tennis court, and a garden that looked more like a park. But none of this had prepared Vincent for what he was about to discover about the woman who had been cleaning his house for 3 years. Maria Conception arrived every day at 7 a.m. at the Moretti mansion. 42 years old, hair always pulled back in a simple bun, impeccably clean uniform, and a discreet smile that Vincent rarely noticed. To him, Maria was just another employee, a silent shadow who kept his house in order while he built his empire. She earned $20,500 per month, a salary that Vincent spent on a single meal at the city's most expensive restaurants. But Vincent didn't know that Maria carried secrets that would leave him shocked. Gabriel Moretti, Vincent's only son, was an 8-year-old child with big, curious eyes, but who lived in his own world. Diagnosed with severe autism at age 3, the boy rarely spoke and seemed not to notice the presence of people around him. Vincent, consumed by business and the pain of having lost his wife in a car accident 2 years earlier, could barely look at his son without feeling a tightness in his chest. Gabriel spent his days locked in his room, surrounded by expensive toys that never interested him, while a succession of specialized nannies tried unsuccessfully to establish some connection with him. That Tuesday morning, Vincent left the house at 7:30 as always, driving his black Mercedes-Benz worth $500,000 toward his office on Wilshire Boulevard. His schedule was packed. Meeting with Japanese investors at 9, presentation of a new project at 11, lunch with the mayor at 1 p.m. The day promised to yield a few more million for his coffers, but what Vincent didn't expect was that his secretary would call at 2 p.m., canceling all appointments because of food poisoning that hit half the executive team. Annoyed at having to return home in the middle of the afternoon, Vincent drove through the streets of Los Angeles, grumbling about the incompetence of his employees. His mind was seething with numbers, contracts, and market strategies. At 45 years old, he had dedicated his entire existence to transforming the small operation he inherited from his father into a gigantic corporation. He had no time for frivolities, much less for domestic matters. His house functioned like a luxury hotel, where he slept and had breakfast before leaving for his financial battles. When parking in the mansion's garage at 3:15 p.m., Vincent found it strange to hear soft music coming from inside the house. It wasn't the type of sound that usually played in his residence. Intrigued and slightly irritated that someone was messing with his imported sound equipment, he walked through the side entrance that gave direct access to the kitchen, intending to find out which employee had taken the liberty of changing the atmosphere of his house. But it was when passing through the hallway leading to the main living room that Vincent stopped abruptly. What he saw left him completely motionless. There in the center of his luxurious living room, Maria Conception was dancing slowly with Gabriel in her arms. The music was a soft, instrumental waltz, and Maria moved with impressive grace, as if she were a professional ballerina. But what shocked Vincent most was his son's expression. Gabriel was smiling. For the first time in months, the boy was really smiling, his eyes shining in a way Vincent had forgotten existed. The scene was touchingly beautiful. Maria held Gabriel carefully, guiding his small feet in gentle circular movements across the marble floor. She hummed softly a melody different from the music playing, and Gabriel, amazed, tried to follow the rhythm with his little hands. It was as if magic had taken over that environment Vincent had always considered cold and formal. Vincent remained hidden behind the marble column that separated the hallway from the living room, watching that scene that defied everything he believed he knew about his house, his son, and his employee. For almost 15 minutes, he watched Maria interact with Gabriel in a way that none of the expensive nannies he'd hired had managed. The boy wasn't just present and attentive, but participatory, happy, alive. When the music ended, Maria sat on the floor next to Gabriel and began talking to him in a sweet and patient tone. To Vincent's total surprise, Gabriel responded, not with clear words, but with sounds, gestures, and expressions that Maria seemed to understand perfectly. It was as if she spoke the boy's secret language, a language that Vincent, his own father, had never deciphered. The housekeeper then stood up and walked to the grand piano that decorated a corner of the living room. Vincent had bought the instrument for $200,000, just for show, since no one in the house knew how to play. But Maria sat before the keyboard and began to execute a classical piece with a technique that left Vincent speechless. It wasn't a simple chord or basic melody. It was Chopin Nocturne in E-flat major, Opus 9, No. 2. Vincent recognized the piece because his late wife used to listen to it. Gabriel approached the piano and placed his small hands on the low keys, creating a simple harmony that integrated perfectly with Maria's melody. The two seemed to be in perfect sync, creating music that filled the house with an emotion Vincent hadn't felt in years. Tears began to form in his eyes, but he didn't know if it was because of the beauty of the scene or the pain of realizing how much he distanced himself from his own son. It was then that Vincent decided to reveal himself. He coughed discreetly and walked toward the living room, pretending he'd just arrived. Maria immediately stood up from the piano, her face flushed with embarrassment, and Gabriel returned to his usual state of isolation, as if the magic had been broken by a spell. "I'm sorry, Mr. Moretti," Maria said, nervously adjusting her uniform. "I didn't know you'd be back early. I was just..." Gabriel seemed a little restless, and I thought maybe some music could calm him down. Vincent looked at her with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. For 3 years, Maria had been practically invisible in his house. He only knew her full name because of the contract documents, that Gabriel was very attached to her, and that she did her cleaning work with exemplary efficiency. But now, faced with this unexpected revelation, he realized he knew absolutely nothing about who Maria Concepcion really was. "Where did you learn to play piano like that?" asked Vincent, his voice carrying an authority he couldn't disguise his perplexity. Maria lowered her eyes as if the question hurt her. "It's a long story, Mr. Moretti. I wouldn't want to bother you with details of my personal life." But Vincent wasn't willing to accept an evasive answer. For the first time in years, something had awakened his attention in a way that didn't involve business or money. "I have time," he said, surprised by his own response. "And I want to know." Gabriel has never reacted like this with anyone. In 2 years of treatment, therapists, specialists, no one has accomplished what you just did in 15 minutes. Maria hesitated, looking at Gabriel, who was now playing distractedly with his own fingers, lost in his inner world again. "Mr. Moretti, I really need to finish cleaning the house. The laundry still hasn't been organized and..." "The cleaning can wait," Vincent interrupted, using the commanding tone that worked in boardrooms. "I want an explanation now." Maria's expression changed subtly. For a moment, Vincent saw something in her eyes he'd never noticed before. It wasn't submission or fear. It was wounded dignity. "With all due respect, Mr. Moretti, I'm not obligated to share my personal life. I do my job well, I take care of the house with affection, and I always treat Gabriel with the love he deserves. If that's not enough..." "It's not about being enough," Vincent said, realizing he'd adopted a more aggressive tone than intended. "It's about the fact that my son, who can barely speak to the most expensive doctors in the country, was here laughing and interacting with you in a way I've never seen. You played a Chopin piece like a professional concert pianist. That's not normal for a housekeeper." The words left his mouth before he could think of the consequences. Maria stiffened, her face assuming an expression Vincent had never seen. She was no longer the submissive, silent woman who cleaned his house. She was someone completely different. "Normal for a housekeeper," Maria repeated, her voice low but loaded with contained emotion. "You're right, Mr. Moretti. It's not normal. Just as it's not normal for a father who doesn't know his son loves classical music. It's not normal for a child to spend entire days alone in a room while his father is too busy building an empire to notice he exists. It's not normal." "How dare you?" Vincent exploded, his face reddening with anger. "You're my employee. You have no right to question how I raise my son or how I conduct my life." Gabriel, frightened by the shouting, began to rock back and forth, a sign of stress Vincent recognized. Immediately, Maria knelt beside the boy and began humming softly the same melody as before. Gabriel gradually calmed down, his body relaxing at the sound of her voice. Vincent stood watching, his anger mixed with a strange sense of inadequacy. In his own house, before his own son, he felt like a stranger. Maria, on the other hand, seemed to know exactly what Gabriel needed. "I apologize," Maria said, standing up after Gabriel calmed down. "I had no right to speak like that. I know what my place is in this house." But Vincent, for the first time in years, wasn't sure what anyone's place was. "Why didn't you tell me Gabriel responds well to music?" he asked, his voice lower now. "I did tell you," Maria responded simply. "3 times. Once to Mrs. Helena, your former housekeeper, once to Nanny Carla, and once directly to you 6 months ago when you passed through the kitchen while I was giving Gabriel lunch. You said you didn't have time to talk about child entertainment methods and that I should focus on cleaning." Vincent felt a strange weight in his stomach. He didn't remember that conversation, but he didn't doubt it had happened. How many other important things had he ignored in his constant rush? "And the piano?" he asked. "Since when do you know how to play?" Maria smiled sadly. "Since I was 5 years old, Mr. Moretti, but that's also a long story." At that moment, Vincent's cell phone rang. It was his secretary informing him that the Japanese investors wanted to reschedule the meeting for the next day, and that several other appointments needed to be reorganized because of the food poisoning at the company. Vincent hung up the phone and looked again at Maria, who had returned to interacting silently with Gabriel. For the first time in his adult life, Vincent Moretti found himself facing a choice that didn't involve money, power, or business. He could simply ignore what he'd witnessed, return to his routine, and continue treating Maria as an invisible employee. Or he could do something he hadn't done in years: stop and really pay attention to someone. "The long story," Vincent said finally. "I want to hear it." Maria looked at him with surprise. "Mr. Moretti, are you sure? I really don't want to bother you." "I'm sure," he responded, surprising himself with his own determination. "And bring Gabriel. If music calms him, let the music play." It was then that Maria Conception began to tell a story that would forever change the way Vincent saw the world around him. And what she revealed in the following hours would be so shocking that Vincent would question everything he believed he knew about social class, human dignity, and the true value of a person. Maria began her story by sitting on the same sofa where Vincent used to review million-dollar contracts. Gabriel approached her naturally, as if it were the most normal thing in the world, and rested his head on her lap. Vincent observed this intimacy between his son and his employee with a mixture of amazement and a pang of something that could be envy. "My father was conductor of the Portland Symphony Orchestra," Maria began, her voice taking on a different, more refined tone, as if talking about her history transformed her into another person. "My mother was the first violinist of the same orchestra. I grew up hearing rehearsals at home surrounded by classical music and instruments." Vincent frowned. The Portland Symphony Orchestra was a nationally respected institution. Conductors of orchestras at that level weren't common people. They were prestigious artists with higher education and dignified salaries. "I started piano at age 5, Maria continued, her fingers unconsciously caressing Gabriel's hair, who seemed hypnotized by her voice. "By 8, I was already playing Beethoven. At 12, I was accepted into the Conservatory of Music as a special student. My parents said I had a rare gift." The story was beginning to take on a dimension Vincent hadn't anticipated. "Conservatory of Music," he repeated. "That's higher education, elite training." "It is," Maria confirmed, a shadow passing through her eyes. "At 16, I received a scholarship to study classical piano at the Cologne University of Music in Germany, one of Europe's most prestigious institutions for training professional pianists." Vincent felt as if the ground was moving beneath his feet. Cologne University of Music. He knew this institution because he'd considered sending Gabriel to a special school in Germany. It was one of the best music schools in the world. "Germany?" he asked, his voice coming out lower than intended. 5 years in Cologne," Maria said, now looking out the living room window, as if seeing not the mansion's garden, but another place, another time. "Bachelor's degree in piano performance with a specialization in European classical music. I studied with professors who had been direct students of great masters. I played in concert halls that had hosted the greatest pianists in history." Gabriel made a low musical sound, as if reacting to the emotion in Maria's voice. She smiled at him and continued caressing his hair. At 21, I returned to America with a degree that opened doors to the best theaters and orchestras in the country. I had proposals to play at the Walt Disney Concert Hall, invitations for CD recordings, offers of contracts with international record labels. Vincent was beginning to understand that he had completely misjudged the woman who had been cleaning his house for 3 years. But he was also confused. If Maria had this background, what was she doing working as a housekeeper? What happened? He asked, anticipating the story wouldn't have a happy ending. Maria was silent for a few moments, her fingers stopping their caressing of Gabriel's hair. When she spoke again, her voice was loaded with an old pain. My father had a stroke at 52. It was sudden and devastating. Overnight, the conductor who led an 80-musician orchestra couldn't even hold a spoon by himself. The atmosphere in the room changed. Vincent realized he was facing not just a revelation about Maria's background, but a personal tragedy. My mother fell into deep depression, Maria continued. Seeing the man she loved, who was her musical and life partner, reduced to helplessness, was too much for her. She stopped playing, stopped eating properly, stopped living. Gabriel moved in Maria's lap as if sensing the sadness in her voice. She immediately changed her tone, making it softer so as not to disturb him. I was 22 and had signed contracts that guaranteed me an international career, but I also had a destroyed family and parents who needed full-time care. There were no other options. I canceled all contracts, refused all proposals, and returned to Portland to take care of them. Vincent began to understand the dimension of the sacrifice. An international career as a classical pianist was something very few people in the world managed to achieve. Maria had given that up to care for her family. For 7 years, I took care of my parents. My father needed physical therapy, speech therapy, very expensive medicines. My mother needed psychiatric monitoring and controlled medication. Health insurance didn't cover half the treatments. I sold my piano, sold the rare sheet music I'd collected, sold everything that had any value. Maria paused, as if the next words were particularly painful. To pay for the treatments, I started working giving private piano lessons to children from wealthy families. It was ironic. I, who could have been playing on Europe's most prestigious stages, was teaching basic scales to children of businessmen who thought piano was an elegant hobby. Vincent felt a strange discomfort. He himself was exactly the type of businessman who would hire piano lessons for Gabriel just for status, without really valuing the art or the teacher. But private lessons weren't enough, Maria continued. Medical costs increased every month. My father had other complications. My mother had to be hospitalized twice for suicide attempts. I started working 2-3 different jobs. I gave lessons in the morning, cleaned offices in the afternoon, played piano at events at night. The story was becoming a devastating portrait of how life circumstances can completely change a person's destiny. Vincent, who had always believed that success was only the result of competence and effort, was being confronted with the reality that sometimes life simply falls apart, regardless of talent or dedication. 5 years ago, my mother finally lost the battle against depression, Maria said, her voice almost a whisper. She couldn't bear seeing my father in that state anymore and seeing how our family had disintegrated. She took an excessive dose of antidepressant medication one December morning. Gabriel made a soft sound and hugged Maria's arm as if he knew she needed comfort. Vincent remained silent, not knowing what to say in the face of such deep pain. 6 months later, my father died from another stroke complication. I think, in a way, he died of a broken heart. He couldn't live without her. Maria took a deep breath before continuing. I was left alone in the world at 29 years old. With hospital debts of over $100,000, no house, I'd mortgaged it to pay for treatments, and no prospects. All my musical training seemed useless in the face of the basic need to survive. Vincent was beginning to understand why a pianist trained in Germany was cleaning his house, but the story still wasn't finished. That's when I met Julia, Maria said, and for the first time since she'd started telling her story, a genuine smile appeared on her face. Julia? Vincent asked. My daughter, Maria responded simply. Vincent felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. Maria had a daughter. In 3 years of work in his house, he'd never asked if she had family, children, dreams. Nothing. To him, she was just an employee. Julia is 12 now, Maria continued, her face lighting up as she spoke of her daughter. She's the smartest person I know. She's in 7th grade at public school but has grades that would shame any private school student. She dreams of being a doctor. Gabriel lifted his head from Maria's lap and looked at her attentively, as if he knew she was talking about something important. When I found out I was pregnant, I'd just lost my parents and was living in a cheap boarding house in downtown Portland. Julia's father was a musician I met during one of the night jobs. When he found out about the pregnancy, he disappeared. I never saw him again. Vincent tried to imagine Maria, a woman with international higher education, pregnant and alone in a cheap boarding house. The image disturbed him deeply. During the pregnancy, I worked until the last possible day. I cleaned houses in the morning, gave private lessons in the afternoon, played at parties at night. I saved every penny to ensure Julia was born with adequate medical care. Maria looked at Gabriel tenderly before continuing. When Julia was born, I promised her that no matter what I had to do, she would have the opportunities life took from me. That she would study, that she'd be a doctor if she wanted, that the world wouldn't limit her by the circumstances of her birth. Vincent was beginning to see Maria in a completely different light. She wasn't just a housekeeper. She was a mother fighting to give her daughter a better future, just as he wanted to give the best possible future to Gabriel. 3 years ago, an acquaintance told me about this opening at your house. She said the salary was good, that the boss traveled a lot, and that I'd have stability. It was exactly what I needed. A steady job that would allow me to pay for Julia's private school and still have a little left over to invest in her future. Private school? Vincent asked. With a housekeeper's salary? Maria smiled sadly. Mr. Moretti, of the $2,500 I earn here, $1,100 goes to Julia's school tuition, $400 for rent of our small apartment, $300 for food, $200 for transportation. The rest goes to school supplies, clothes, and savings for her college. Vincent did the mental math and realized Maria lived with a minimal financial margin. There was practically nothing left for herself. And you never played piano professionally again? He asked. I play here, Maria responded, looking at the grand piano in the living room. When I finish cleaning and Gabriel is in his room, sometimes I play for a few minutes. It's the only thing that still connects me to who I was before. Vincent looked at his $200,000 piano and realized that, ironically, the instrument found its true purpose only when Maria played it. For him, it was just expensive decoration. Gabriel has always liked it when you play? Vincent asked. Since the first day, Maria responded. In the first week I worked here, he appeared in the living room while I was playing. He stood at the door, just listening. The next day, the same thing happened. Within a week, he was already sitting on the floor next to the piano while I played. Vincent felt a pang of jealousy and guilt. His own son had developed a routine, a connection with his employee, and he'd never noticed. It was Gabriel who taught me that music is a universal language, Maria continued. He may not speak much, but he understands every note, every emotion I transmit through the piano. Sometimes, when I play sad pieces, he comes and puts his hand on my arm as if wanting to console me. Gabriel, as if understanding he was being talked about, made a musical sound and gently touched Maria's arm. Vincent stood watching the natural interaction between the two and realized he'd lost years of opportunities to connect with his son. Why did you never tell me about your background? Vincent asked. Maria hesitated before answering. Mr. Moretti, with all due respect, in 3 years you never showed interest in knowing who I was. To you, I was the efficient housekeeper who kept your house clean. My background wouldn't change that. Maria's answer was like a slap in Vincent's face. She was right. He'd never shown any interest in the person behind the work uniform. Besides, Maria continued, experience taught me that people like you don't see people like me as equals, regardless of our education. For you, if we're cleaning your houses, it's because that's our place in the world. Vincent wanted to protest but realized Maria was right. He really had automatically classified her based on her function, not on who she was as a person. It was at that moment the house phone rang. It was Vincent's secretary informing him that the Japanese investors wanted a video conference at 8 p.m. to discuss contract details. A $50 million deal was at stake. Vincent looked at the clock. It was 5:30 p.m. He'd have to prepare for the meeting, review documents, organize the presentation. It was exactly the kind of situation that would normally make him completely forget about anything else. But this time was different. He looked at Maria, who was humming softly to Gabriel, and realized that for the first time in years he was facing something more important than money. "The meeting can wait," Vincent said, hanging up the phone. "I want to hear the rest of the story." Maria looked at him with surprise. "Mr. Moretti, if it's important for your business—" "It is," Vincent interrupted. "But this here is also important. Continue." And it was at that moment that Maria Concepcion revealed the most shocking secret of all, something that would make Vincent question not only his prejudices, but his entire understanding of what really matters in life. But what she told next would be so impactful that it would forever change the relationship between them and Gabriel's future. What Maria revealed next left Vincent completely speechless. Maria looked deeply into Vincent's eyes, as if evaluating whether he was really prepared for what she was about to reveal. Gabriel continued, nestled in her lap, completely relaxed, something Vincent rarely saw in his son. "Mr. Moretti," Maria began, her voice taking on an even more serious tone. "What I'm going to tell you now might change your perception of everything. About me, about Gabriel, about what it really means to care for a special needs child." Vincent sat down, feeling growing anxiety. Something in Maria's tone suggested the revelation would be even more impactful than everything she'd already shared. 2 years ago, when Gabriel was still being seen by Dr. Fernandez, the neuropsychologist you hired, Maria said, "she approached me for a private conversation. You were traveling to London, remember?" Vincent vaguely remembered the trip. It had been an important negotiation that lasted 2 weeks. "Yes, I remember. Dr. Fernandez was worried about Gabriel's development. She said that despite all the expensive treatments, he wasn't progressing as he should, that there seemed to be an emotional barrier that none of the conventional methods could break." Vincent frowned. Dr. Fernandez had never mentioned this to him. "What kind of barrier?" "Emotional abandonment," Maria said simply, and the words cut Vincent like a blade. Gabriel wasn't progressing because he felt he didn't have a stable emotional connection with his father figure. He needed more than professional therapists. He needed love, attention, and constant presence. Vincent felt his face heat up. "I always hired the best professionals for Gabriel. I always gave him the best treatment money can buy. But you never gave him your presence," Maria responded without aggression, just with deep sadness in her voice. "Dr. Fernandez asked me if I had experience with special needs children, if I could help Gabriel in a more personal way." Vincent was beginning to understand there was much more to the relationship between Maria and his son than he'd imagined. "That's when I told her about Julia," Maria continued. And Vincent realized there was another layer to the story he didn't know. "What does Julia have to do with this?" Maria took a deep breath, as if the next revelation was the most difficult of all. "Mr. Moretti, Julia is also autistic." Vincent felt as if the world had stopped. "What do you mean?" "My daughter was diagnosed with mild autism at age 4. For 8 years I've been studying, researching, specializing in developmental techniques for children on the autism spectrum. Not through formal academic training, but out of desperate need to help my own daughter." The revelation hit Vincent like a tsunami. Maria wasn't just a trained pianist who'd become a housekeeper. She was also a mother who'd become an autism specialist out of love for her daughter. "That's why you understand Gabriel in a way no one else can," Vincent murmured. "Exactly," Maria confirmed. "I recognize in Gabriel the same patterns I observed in Julia. The way he responds to music, how he seeks emotional connections through sensory stimuli, how he closes off when he feels threatened or misunderstood." Gabriel made a soft sound and looked at Vincent as if he knew they were talking about him. For the first time, Vincent really looked into his son's eyes and tried to see what Maria saw. "Dr. Fernandez asked me to work with Gabriel informally," Maria continued, "to use the techniques I'd developed with Julia. But she made me promise not to tell you, because she thought you wouldn't accept that a housekeeper could know more about your son than the professionals you were paying." Vincent felt a mixture of anger and shame. Anger because his own neuropsychologist had been conspiring with his employee behind his back. Shame because he recognized she was probably right about his reaction. "For 2 years, Maria said, I've been working with Gabriel every day, not just as a housekeeper, but as an informal therapist, using music, dance, sensory games, alternative communication techniques, everything I learned helping Julia. And it worked, Vincent said, remembering all the small improvements in Gabriel that he'd attributed to the expensive professional treatments. It worked, Maria confirmed. Gabriel developed communication skills, started showing more affection, became calmer and more receptive. But all the progress was credited to the therapists you were paying, not to the housekeeper who was really doing the work. Vincent was beginning to realize the enormity of the situation. For 2 years, the person who was really helping his son was the one he considered just a domestic employee. "Why did you never tell me?" he asked. "Because I know how people like you think," Maria responded, her voice loaded with old pain. "If you knew a housekeeper was playing therapist with your son, you'd fire me immediately. You'd prefer to pay thousands of dollars a month to certified professionals rather than trust that a poor woman could know something valuable." Vincent wanted to deny it, but knew Maria was right. He probably would have reacted exactly that way. "But 3 months ago," Maria continued, "the situation changed." "How so?" Maria looked at Gabriel with a tenderness Vincent had never seen directed at his son. "Gabriel started calling me Mom." Vincent felt as if he'd been struck by lightning. "He what?" "Not openly. Not in a way other people would notice," Maria explained quickly, seeing the shocked expression on Vincent's face. "But in private moments when we're alone, he sometimes whispers Mommy when he wants my attention, or makes gestures I've learned to recognize as the equivalent." Vincent was silent for several minutes, processing this devastating information. His son was calling another woman Mom, and not just any woman, but his housekeeper. "Mr. Moretti," Maria said gently, "I never encouraged it. I always tried to redirect him, remind him that you're his father, that I'm just Maria. But to Gabriel, I represent the stable mother figure he lost 2 years ago." Vincent thought of his late wife, Carmen. She died when Gabriel was only 6 years old, at an age when he most needed emotional stability. Vincent, consumed by grief and business, had distanced himself even more from his son, letting professionals care for his emotional needs. "You replaced Carmen in his life," Vincent said, more to himself than to Maria. "I filled a void," Maria corrected, "but I could never replace the mother he lost, nor would I try to replace the father he has, if that father would allow himself to be present." The criticism was subtle but accurate. Vincent was being confronted with the reality that he'd emotionally abandoned his son, letting an employee fill the void he should have filled. 2 weeks ago," Maria continued, "something happened that scared me a lot." Vincent looked at her attentively. "Gabriel had a severe anxiety attack one morning when I arrived late to work. Julia had had an autistic crisis during the night and I had to take her to the hospital. I got here at 10 a.m. instead of 7 as always." Maria paused, as if the memory still disturbed her. "The morning nanny told me Gabriel spent 3 hours rocking in the corner of his room, crying and repeating sounds she couldn't decipher. When I arrived and he saw me, he threw himself into my arms and wouldn't let go for 2 hours." Vincent was beginning to understand that Gabriel's emotional dependence on Maria was much deeper than he'd imagined. "It was that day I realized the situation had become unsustainable," Maria said. "Gabriel was developing an emotional dependence on me that wasn't healthy, considering I'm just an employee who can be fired at any time." "Did you think about resigning?" Vincent asked. "I thought about it," Maria admitted, "but I also thought about Julia, her school tuition, the apartment we managed to rent, the financial stability this job gives me. And I thought about Gabriel, about what would happen to him if I simply disappeared from his life." Vincent was being forced to confront a complex reality where there were no simple solutions. "That's when I made a decision that could cost me my job," Maria said, looking directly into Vincent's eyes. "What decision?" "I decided to tell you the whole truth, even knowing it probably means my dismissal. Because Gabriel deserves a present father and you deserve to know who your son really is and what he needs." Vincent was silent, absorbing the courage it had taken Maria to make that decision. She was risking her financial stability, her daughter's future, everything for honesty. But Maria still wasn't finished. "And there's one more thing you need to know," she said, her voice taking on an even more serious tone. Vincent looked at her, already preparing for another shock. "Julia wants to meet Gabriel." "What do you mean?" "She knows I work at a family's house with an autistic child. During these 2 years, I've been sharing with her the techniques I use with Gabriel, and she's been suggesting new approaches based on her own experience. Julia has developed incredible emotional maturity because of her own autism and has a natural intuition for helping other children on the spectrum. Vincent was trying to process the idea that a 12-year-old child could have valuable insights into his son's treatment. Julia said she'd like to be Gabriel's special friend, that they could help each other. She's never had the opportunity to interact with another autistic child and thinks it could be beneficial for both. The proposal was so unusual that Vincent didn't know how to react. His first reaction was protective. He didn't want to expose Gabriel to strangers. But then he remembered that Maria wasn't a stranger. She knew Gabriel better than he did himself. It was at that moment the phone rang again. It was his secretary, once again reminding him about the video conference with the Japanese. Vincent looked at the clock and saw it was already 7:15 p.m. The meeting would be in 45 minutes. "Mr. Moretti," Maria said, standing up and gently placing Gabriel on the sofa. "I know you have important commitments. I don't want to take more of your time. I've said everything I needed to say." But Vincent didn't move. For the first time in his adult life, a business meeting wasn't his main priority. "The Japanese can wait," he said, hanging up the phone without answering. "Or they can give up on the deal. I don't care." Maria looked at him with surprise. "Mr. Moretti, if it's an important contract..." "It's a $50 million contract," Vincent said. "But I discovered today that there are things more important than money." It was a statement Vincent himself didn't believe he was capable of making. For 20 years, money had been his only measure of success and importance. "I want to meet Julia," Vincent said suddenly. Maria was speechless. "Mr. Moretti, your daughter. I want to meet her. If she can really help Gabriel, if you two are specialists in something I clearly don't understand, then I want to learn." Maria was silent for a few moments, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Are you sure?" she asked finally. "I'm sure," Vincent responded, and for the first time felt really certain about something that didn't involve business. "But first I want to know something." "What?" "In all your training, in all your experience with autism, in all these years caring for Gabriel and Julia, what's your honest opinion about my ability as a father?" The question came from a part of Vincent he didn't know existed, a vulnerable part, willing to hear painful criticisms in the name of personal growth. Maria hesitated. "Mr. Moretti, I don't think it's my place to judge." "It is your place," Vincent interrupted. "You know my son better than I do. You've seen the damage my absence caused. I want the truth, even if it hurts." Maria looked at Gabriel, who was playing quietly with his own fingers, lost in his inner world. "You're a brilliant man," Maria began carefully. "You built an empire. You're respected in the business world. You have exceptional intelligence for strategy and leadership." Vincent waited for the but he knew was coming. "But as a father," Maria continued, "you're afraid of your own son, afraid of not knowing how to deal with his autism, afraid of failing, afraid of not being enough. So you outsource all emotional care to professionals, thinking money can solve everything." Vincent knew she was right, but hearing the truth was devastating. "Gabriel doesn't need a perfect father," Maria said softly. "He needs a present father. He needs to know he's loved unconditionally, that he has value beyond his limitations, that there's someone in the world who knows him and accepts him exactly as he is." "And if I don't know how to do that?" Vincent asked, his voice coming out more vulnerable than intended. "Then learn," Maria responded simply. "Yeah. The same way you learn to build a $200 million company, with dedication, patience, and love." Gabriel looked at Vincent at that moment, as if he'd noticed they were talking about him. His big, expressive eyes met his father's, and Vincent saw in them not just the autistic condition, but a pure and loving soul that was waiting for connection. "How do I start?" Vincent asked. "Start by staying," Maria responded. "Tomorrow morning when I arrive, don't leave for the office immediately. Stay to see how Gabriel wakes up, how he reacts to the day, what he likes for breakfast. Learn his routine." The suggestion was simple, but for Vincent, it represented a radical change in priorities. And after that, participate in the routine. Help with breakfast. Sit next to him while he eats. Let him get used to your constant presence. Autism is about predictability and security. Gabriel needs to know he can count on you. Vincent nodded, absorbing each piece of advice. "And the music?" he asked. How do I use that to connect with him? Maria smiled. Gabriel loves when I play Debussy, especially Clair de Lune. If you sit next to the piano tomorrow while I play, he might start to associate your presence with happy moments. Would you continue playing for him? Vincent asked. Even after everything we talked about today? Mr. Moretti, Maria said, I never stopped being a pianist. Just the circumstances in which I play changed. If I can use my music to help Gabriel, it's the most rewarding thing in my day. Vincent looked at his $200,000 piano and realized he finally understood its true value. And Julia? He asked. When can I meet her? She could come Saturday, Maria said hesitantly. If you're really sure. I'm sure, Vincent reaffirmed. But I want to do this right. I want her to feel welcome, not like a visitor in a rich house where she doesn't belong. Maria looked at him with surprise. Mr. Moretti, how much does Julia know about this house, about my financial situation? She knows I work in a big house for a wealthy family, but I've always taught her that financial wealth doesn't determine a person's value. Vincent nodded. Wise. But I want her to feel, when she comes here, that she's a special guest, not the housekeeper's daughter. The words came from Vincent with a naturalness that surprised him. He was genuinely concerned about the feelings of a 12-year-old child he'd never met. There's something I need to ask, Vincent said. All this time you've been working here, caring for Gabriel, using your training and experience. Do you feel exploited? Maria considered the question carefully. Exploited is a strong word, Mr. Moretti. I always knew I was doing more than the work I was being paid for, but I also knew I was helping a child who needed it, and that gave me purpose. But you deserve to be recognized and compensated adequately, Vincent insisted. Perhaps, Maria admitted, but life isn't always fair. Sometimes we do what's right simply because it's right, not because we'll be rewarded. Vincent was impressed by Maria's wisdom and dignity in the face of unjust circumstances. What if I wanted to change that? He asked. What if I wanted to officially recognize your work with Gabriel? Maria looked at him with curiosity. What do you mean? I mean, maybe it's time for you to stop being a housekeeper who informally helps an autistic child and start being officially what you've always been, a child development specialist. Maria was silent, not fully understanding where Vincent was going. I'm offering a new contract, Vincent said. Not as a housekeeper, but as a specialized caregiver and developmental therapist for Gabriel, with a salary compatible with your training and experience. Maria's eyes widened. Mr. Moretti, I don't have formal certification in therapy. But you have results, Vincent interrupted. You have practical experience, you have Gabriel's trust, and you have knowledge that certified professionals couldn't match. To me, that's worth more than any diploma. The proposal was so unexpected that Maria was speechless. What would the salary be? She asked finally. $8,000 per month to start, Vincent said, with annual review based on Gabriel's progress, plus medical benefits for you and Julia. Maria began to cry. Not tears of sadness, but of relief and disbelief. $8,000 was more than she'd dreamed of earning since losing her musical career. Why? She asked through tears. Why are you doing this? Because today I learned that real value has nothing to do with money, Vincent responded. It has to do with impact, with care, with dedication. You impacted my son's life in a way $200 million couldn't. That deserves recognition. Gabriel, noticing Maria was emotional, approached and gently touched her face, making a consoling sound. The connection between them was so natural and deep that Vincent felt a pang of emotion. There's one condition, Vincent said. Maria looked at him with apprehension. You have to teach me everything you know about Gabriel. I want to be an active part of his development, not just the father who pays the bills. Maria smiled through her tears. It would be an honor, Mr. Moretti. And another thing, Vincent continued. Julia needs a better school. With $8,000, you can pay for one of the best private schools in Los Angeles. I want her to have all the opportunities her intelligence deserves. Maria was crying more intensely now. Mr. Moretti, I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me, Vincent said. You need to keep doing what you were already doing, taking care of my son better than I knew how. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. Gabriel walked to Vincent, looked into his eyes with more focus than he'd ever shown, and extended his small hand. Vincent moved, took his son's hand. Gabriel then made a soft sound that sounded almost like daddy. "Did he say daddy?" Vincent asked, barely able to contain his emotion. "He did," Maria confirmed, smiling. "I think he finally feels he has a present father." Vincent hugged Gabriel for the first time in months. The boy didn't pull away as he used to. Instead, he relaxed in his father's arms, as if it were the safest place in the world. "Maria," Vincent said, still hugging Gabriel, "there's one more thing I want to propose." "What?" "I want you to go back to playing piano professionally." Maria looked at him with confusion. "What do you mean?" "I have contacts in the Los Angeles cultural world. I know the director of the Walt Disney Concert Hall. I have friends who organize classical music events. I can open doors that have been closed to you because of life circumstances." The proposal was so unexpected that Maria had no reaction. "I'm not saying to abandon Gabriel," Vincent clarified quickly. "I'm saying you can have both. You can be his specialized caregiver during the day and return to the stages at night. Julia is mature enough to understand, and I can guarantee you'll have all the flexibility necessary." "Mr. Moretti," Maria said, her voice trembling with emotion, "it's been 15 years since I played professionally, but your fingers still remember," Vincent said, looking at the piano. "And your heart never forgot. I saw that today when you played Chopin. It wasn't just perfect technique, it was pure art." Maria looked at the piano as if seeing it for the first time. "Think about it," Vincent said. "You don't need to decide now, but I want you to know the opportunity exists if you want it." Gabriel made a sound and pointed to the piano. It was as if he was encouraging Maria to play. "I think someone here wants to hear music," Vincent said, smiling at his son. Maria walked to the piano, still processing everything that had happened in the last hour. She sat before the keys and began to play Clair de Lune by Debussy. Gabriel immediately approached and sat on the floor next to the piano, as he always did. But this time Vincent joined him. Father and son sat side by side on the marble floor of the luxurious living room, listening to Maria transform the house into a place of beauty and emotion. Vincent looked at Gabriel and realized that for the first time he was really seeing his son, not as a problem to be solved or a responsibility to be outsourced, but as a unique and valuable person who deserved unconditional love. When the music ended, Gabriel looked at Vincent and smiled, a genuine smile full of affection and trust. "Daddy," Gabriel said clearly, surprising everyone. Vincent felt tears roll down his face. "Yes, son. Daddy is here and isn't going away anymore." Maria observed the scene from the piano, her heart full of a joy she hadn't felt in years, not just for the transformation she was witnessing between father and son, but for the renewed hope in her own life. "Mr. Moretti," she said, "there's one last thing I need to tell you." Vincent looked at her, already mentally preparing for any new revelation. "Julia wrote a letter to Gabriel 2 weeks ago, when I told her they might meet. May I read it?" Vincent sat down, curious. Maria took a folded paper from her uniform pocket. "Dear Gabriel, my name is Julia, and I'm the daughter of Maria who takes care of you. My mom tells me you like music and that you're very intelligent and special. I'm also special in a way similar to you. Sometimes the world seems difficult to understand, and sometimes people don't know how to talk to us. But I think special children like us have a secret language that only we understand. I would very much like to be your friend, and maybe we can teach each other new things. My mom says you have a very important father and that you live in a big house. I live in a small house, but it's full of love. Maybe we can share what we have that's best. With affection, Julia." Vincent was moved by the maturity and sensitivity of the letter from a 12-year-old child. "Did she really write this alone?" he asked. "Every word," Maria confirmed. "Julia has an emotional wisdom that impresses me every day. I want to answer her letter," Vincent said impulsively. Maria looked at him with surprise. "Mr. Moretti, I want to write a letter to Julia, introducing myself and thanking her for everything you've done for Gabriel, and officially inviting her to come here on Saturday." Vincent went to his office desk and got paper and pen. He wrote, "Dear Julia, my name is Vincent and I'm Gabriel's father. Today your mother told me about you and how you two have been caring for my son with such affection. I want to apologize for taking so long to realize how important you are in Gabriel's life. I also want to thank you for your generosity in wanting to be his friend. Gabriel is very lucky to have such special people caring for him. I would very much like to meet you and hope we can become an extended family, where everyone takes care of everyone. You and your mother will always have a special place in our house and in our heart. With admiration and gratitude, Vincent Moretti. When he finished writing, Vincent realized he had fundamentally changed. He was no longer just a cold, calculating businessman. He was a father, a human being capable of gratitude and love. Saturday at 2 p.m.? He asked Maria. Perfect, she responded, smiling. Gabriel, who had heard the conversation, made animated sounds and started clapping. It was as if he knew something wonderful was about to happen. One last question, Vincent said. What do you think Gabriel needs most now? Maria looked at the boy who was playing happily on the living room floor. I think he needs to know he belongs somewhere, she said. That he has a family that loves him, that he has a bright future ahead, and that his differences are gifts, not limitations. Vincent looked at Gabriel and saw for the first time not a problematic child who needed to be fixed, but a unique and wonderful boy who needed to be loved and understood. Then that's what he'll have, Vincent said with determination. A family that loves him unconditionally. At that moment, Vincent made a decision that surprised even himself. Maria, cancel all my appointments for next week. Mr. Moretti, I'm going to spend the entire week learning to be a father. I want you to teach me everything about Gabriel. I want to learn his routine, his likes, his needs. I want to know how to talk to him, how to play with him, how to be part of his life. Maria was speechless. A whole week? A whole week, Vincent confirmed. Business can wait. Gabriel has waited too long for a present father. Gabriel, as if understanding the conversation, walked to Vincent and climbed into his lap. For the first time in years, Vincent felt the perfect weight of his son in his arms and realized there was nothing in the world more important than that moment. Daddy stays, Gabriel said clearly, surprising everyone. Yes, son, Vincent responded, his voice loaded with emotion. Daddy stays. Maria observed the scene with tears of happiness. After years sacrificing her own dreams to care for others, she finally saw the possibility of a future where everyone could be happy. Mr. Moretti, she said, may I ask one last question? Of course. What changed? What made you see everything differently today? Vincent thought for a moment, looking at Gabriel in his arms, at the piano that finally had purpose, at the extraordinary woman who had been invisible in his house for 3 years. I realized I was building an empty empire, he said finally. I had everything money can buy, but I was losing everything that really matters. Today you showed me that true wealth isn't in what you own, but in the love you give and receive. Gabriel laughed, a pure, joyful sound that filled the house with a happiness Vincent didn't know was possible. And I realized, Vincent continued, that for 3 years I had 2 extraordinary people in my house, you and Gabriel, and I was too blind to see. Today I decided to open my eyes. Maria smiled, finally believing Vincent's transformation was genuine. So tomorrow we start a new phase? She asked. Tomorrow we start a new life, Vincent corrected. A life where Gabriel has a present father, where you're recognized for what you really are, where Julia has all the opportunities she deserves, and where this house finally becomes a home. Gabriel looked at Vincent and said clearly, home. That's right, son, Vincent said, kissing Gabriel's forehead for the first time in months. Our home, our family. And at that moment, in the luxurious living room of the mansion in Pacific Palisades, 3 lives were completely transformed by the power of love, understanding, and second chances. Vincent Moretti had discovered that being truly rich had nothing to do with money. Maria Conception had recovered not just her professional dignity, but hope in her dreams. And Gabriel had finally found what he needed most: a present father and a family that loved him exactly as he was. 6 months later, Maria was playing again at the Walt Disney Concert Hall, this time with Vincent and Gabriel in the front row, applauding proudly. Julia had become not just Gabriel's best friend, but an adopted sister in every sense. And Vincent had discovered that the best business decision he'd ever made had nothing to do with contracts or investments. It had to do with investing in love. The story of Vincent, Maria, and Gabriel became a powerful lesson that sometimes the most important people in our lives are right in front of us, waiting only for us to open our eyes and hearts to see them. And that true success isn't measured in millions, but in moments of genuine connection, in sincere smiles, and in the ability to transform a house into a home full of love. Because in the end they discovered that the most valuable wealth in the world can't be bought. It can only be cultivated day by day with patience, dedication, and lots of love. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more stories that will move and inspire your life. Share with those who need to believe it's always possible to start over, and that true love transcends all barriers.